Ladies and gentlemen, we are back again for another episode of the Ferris Wheel Classic Rock Show.
Show.
Or the Ferris Wheel Rock Show. We go by both, but we are Classic Rock. So,
We are classic.
We are classic.
By rock.
By rock. So, to the left of me in the booth, a man that picked up the phone and did the one-night love affair with Brigitte Bardot at the Hotel Concorde in Quebec City.
Mon petit.
The man to the left of me that did this.
Yes, my name is Dr. Ian Clark.
Yes, and apparently that love affair was more than one night. It was 3 to 5 years. So if you look at some photos of Bardot, Ian was there. And then to the right of me, a man that actually did take the chance, went all the way to the Alda Hotel in Iceland to have a nice love affair with Bjork.
In one of the fjords?
That's right. And apparently you were there for a little bit. I heard you guys did some really funky stuff in the showers. So the gentleman next to me?
Stephen Wheeler.
There you go. All right. Gents, what is happening today?
Well, today, what can I say? No, I'm sorry. I still think about Richard Clark. How do bands get their name? Because you become used to them. Like, I always thought the Beatles was a really dumb name. You're so used to it, right? What a goofy, like this insect. No, they changed it to a letter, so it's the B. Oh, I get it. It's not a very good, the Zombies. I always call them the best band with the worst name. So today, we're going to be looking through a two-parter, ladies and gentlemen, because it's important that you know this. If you're driving right now, listening to this podcast, pull over to the side of the road. This is going to be heavy stuff.
101 bands.
101 bands, and we're just going to explain to you how the hell these people, mostly bands, not individuals, got their name. So buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
So who should go first?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, of course. Because it is one of my top favorite 5, AC/DC. People want to know, how did that happen? Well, Malcolm and Angus have their sister Margaret to thank for that famous band's name. She suggested it, that the duo, after seeing the letters AC/DC, which was basically on a sewing machine or a vacuum cleaner, actually, that's how it came about. And the whole schoolboy outfit was literally Angus, the school that he went to, wore this outfit.
It was his uniform.
It was his uniform, and after school, he went to practice with the band, which had his two older brothers in there, and therefore the gimmick stuck.
It worked out.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I love this band, except not just for the longevity, but the fact that they actually have the most nerdy T-shirts for this band. Because you have a version of the T-shirt which is Thomas Edison on one side and Nicholas Tesla on the other ones for alternative current and direct current.
Okay.
Which I have to say, like,
not bad.
They're for everyone. You have for the headbangers and for the nerds.
That's good. That's pretty good. I didn't know they had that. That's cool.
All right, next.
Aerosmith.
Yeah, the boys from Boston. Go ahead.
Beantown Boys.
So basically, Joe Kramer said that he and his girlfriend were listening to Ari Nilsson's Aerial Ballet when the couple began looking for a cool band name that had Aereo in them. And he liked how Aerosmith basically sounded, but the band at the time really didn't give a great deal of credit to that interpretation, so it was shelved for a while. And he eventually convinced them that there was nothing better as a name for the band. And it took actually Sinclair Lewis' novel Aerosmith to convince the guys that it was nice and smart.
Yeah,
which is not two words that you really associate with Aerosmith anyways.
I know, it's true. Alice Cooper, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you can understand we're going in alphabetical order here. Alice Cooper was originally the name of the band. They were going to call that band the Nas, but that was taken by Todd Rundgren's first band, which is actually an interesting band. Didn't do much, but Rundgren had the Nas, so they said, why not Alice Cooper? And the fictional Alice was envisioned as a demented, homicidal, elderly woman, probably after, what's his name, Hitchcock's Psycho. And Vince Vernier, the minister's son, played the part on stage so well he became known as Alice Cooper. It's a total fluke.
I thought it was his grandmother's name, to be honest, Alice. I thought Alice was his grandmother's name.
Yeah, I remember when he first came out, people thought, yeah, that's his name. This is Vince. This minister is such a rebel. BTO.
BTO, that's right. Bachman Turner Overweight, as you like to call him.
Hang on, not anymore.
Bachman Turner Overdrive. There's not a great deal of mystery surrounding this one, but then again, it's very simple. Obviously, you got Bachman's name, who was the lead guitarist, and Fred Turner, who had the other name, who was the singer bassist, and they just went Bachman Turner. Let's go overdrive. And that's it.
Taking care of supper, yeah.
Or hamburgers.
Just let it slide.
Next one is Bad Company.
Good band, good singer, Paul Rogers.
Yeah, although this is one of those cases where the name, they probably thought about it for about 5 minutes. They started out in the 60s as the Ivies, but at the end of the decade, the name seemed a little too quaint, a little too early 60s. And so when they signed with Apple...
wait a second. You're talking about, Badfinger.
Oh, sorry, Badfinger. Sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you were doing Bad Company.
Sorry, yeah. I was doing Bad Company.
I'll talk about Bad Company.
So Bad Fingers, I'm going to end that one. So when they signed up with the Beatles Apple label, they basically decided to go with Bad Finger Boogie. And so it's a really interesting approach to naming your band.
Well, McCartney wrote them a song. What is the song he wrote for them? It's coming to me. He did a great demo of it. You can get it to Beatles bootleg. It'll come to me in a second. Bad Company with Paul Rogers. One of the best rock voices ever. Paul Rogers. Still going. God, he has a great voice. He said he was looking at a poster for this 1972 Western starring Jeff Bridges. Wish I knew the name of that movie. And on the poster apparently was, probably something like, "This guy is Bad Company." And that's where he got the name. Why not? You got to get it somewhere.
Right on. All right, I get this one. Good. The Beatles. The name was inspired by early rocker Buddy Holly and the Crickets, who actually had his backing band called the Crickets. Beatles were a big fan of Buddy Holly. Why? I'm not quite sure. But anyways.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, Paul McCartney basically later purchased the publishing rights to Buddy Holly's song.
Fool.
And however, the only one ever recorded on the Buddy Holly tune together was Words of Love for 1964, Beatles for Sale.
True.
And I think Beatles is the way Lennon had described it, was beat.
Yeah,
so
he tried to be cute, so he changed it to an A.
So he wanted to beat his meat, and it was the Beatles. Go ahead.
With the beat.
You got Billy Idol. Wheels, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have to know that, of course, that's not his real name. His real name is William Broad. And you have to go into the context of the era. He came up during the punk era, and he was fronting Generation X. And this is the point where you had people like Johnny Rotten, Rat Scabbies, and all these really weird names. But Billy had this inkling that, frankly, you're better off with a joke in your name.
I guess so.
So basically, he wanted to put the pun in punk. And he decided to go with idol to play on the word idol, basically being meaning both a star and or the lazy put up kind of personality.
Okay, Black Sabbath, originally known as Earth Blues Company. They later shortened it to Earth. Well, what a bad name. Ladies and gentlemen, we're Earth.
Tire.
Shut
in
up.
French.
Tire. It's just really bad. You need then discard the name altogether because another band was already using it. You're lucky. Whoa.
Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Really. No, Earth. Earth. So 60s. They settled on Black Sabbath after attaching the title, which had earlier been used for a 1963 film starring Boris Karloff, to a spooky new song inspired by an apparition seen by bassist Geezer Butler.
All right. So, Blind Faith, which is L'Espoir est aveugle in French, featuring Clapton, Winwood, Ginger Baker, and Rick Grech. Blind Faith was rock's first real supergroup. The name came from the photographer who shot the controversial cover for the short-lived band's only album. He apparently titled the photo Blind Faith. When looking at a name, the band followed suit.
That's a really cool story.
It is
I
pretty
did not
cool
know that story.
You got Blue Oyster Cult, Wheels.
Okay, so watch out, people that are allergic to shellfish. So these are really pioneering hard rockers, and they started off with Soft White Underbelly, which again...
That is so bad.
And so basically they got their name from music journalist Sandy Pearlman, who was an early manager and producer. And it actually comes from a series of poems by Pearlman. And it's a reference to a secretive group of beings from outer space that are clandestinely influencing our common fate. So Kanon before its time.
Yeah, I mean, for God's sakes. But it's not a good name.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan.
Who's
I heard
that
of this
guy?
I've never... Oh, last name switch from Zimmerman. Everybody knows that. But Dylan, he's given so many versions of this. According to one biographer, he was a fan of Matt Dillon, who was a sheriff on an old TV show in the
Not the actor.
50s. Yeah, called Gunsmoke. And then someone said else he took it from the poet Dylan Thomas. Dylan does what Dylan wants. He says so many contradictory things. In 1958, Bob told his high school sweetheart that he planned to devote his life to music and assumed the name Bob Dylan, Dillon, and he later changed it. He also told friends Dylan was his mother's maiden name, which wasn't true. So with Dylan, he creates his own little myths and stuff. God knows where it came from.
So he lied.
He can't stop.
All right. Boston, although they were the only performers named on the Epic Records contract Boston, Boston's Tom Scholes and Brad Delp nixed the idea of calling their band Scholes Delp. That's a decision Scholes must have regretted later when some members challenged his ownership of the group's name. So Scholes' producer John Boylan and his engineer Warren Dewey suggested Boston for the new act. Since that was their musical roots, which were firmly planted. In fact, even as a high school student in Toledo, Ohio, so he's not even from Boston, they always tuned into Boston's WBZ, a high-powered AM radio station.
Excellent.
So next one, Buffalo Springfield.
There's something happening
Here, what it is ain't exactly clear.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you guys want to go on? Or?
Get to it.
Super. So when Stephen Stills, Neil Young, and Richie Fury...
Steven Stills.
Steven. Joined their triple treat singer-songwriter act. Basically, this was an era where people had like really weird names and fanciful approaches to naming their band, and basically they instead chose something really random. It's a brand of steamrollers.
Yeah, I knew this one.
So it's just goes to show sometimes it sounds really good, but it can come from a really bizarre place.
You're just looking at the window and you say, what's the name of that tractor? Buffalo Springfield. I got a name, guys. Buffalo. Okay. That's it.
It's kind of like Abbey Road was supposed to be called Everest because of Paul McCartney smoking the cigarettes.
That's what would we call this? What road are we on?
Abbey
It's called Abbey Road.
Okay.
That's it. Write it down.
Good thing we're not in Fling Flong, Manitoba.
Or Dildo, Newfoundland.
That's good. Call the album.
So Buffalo Springfield, they should have just went with Neil Young's backing band. That's what they should have
Just
just
a
called
second.
themselves.
This leakage in the studio again. I'm hearing some cocktail music coming through, and it's super irritating. There's something we can do, but oh no.
Oh, hello.
And now it's time for Ian's Knock, a little segment we like to call Affairs with Rock Show, where Ian himself will rant and rave on books, reviews, musicians, artists, people, or whatever just does not go his way that day. Who knows? You might be on Ian's Knock, 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 Knock.
Okay, you know what? I think everybody hates at least one classic rock group. That's organic, it's natural, it's healthy. So it makes sense that everybody despises at least one classic rock album. I know I do. Now the good folks at loudersound.com did a survey asking their readers what are the 10 worst albums by brilliant classic rock bands. I love stuff like this where you can balance that off. In other words, really bad albums by really good bands. And you know what? I'm going to go in reverse order here. Number 10, the Eagles, 1974, On the Border. I'll read their comments. The Eagles' third album proved a major breakthrough with the U.S. #1, The Best of My Love. It put the band's career back on track following weak sales of Desperado. But on an artistic level, On the Border is the worst album the Beatles or the Eagles ever made. Yeah, maybe. Number 9, Bob Seger, Noah from 1969. This is a very strange album. It's almost a cult album because what Seeger did is take a back seat while another band member, no one knew this guy, Tom Neame, contributed the material and sings most of the songs, which are just a mess. And that was it. And then Seeger became this kind of deity in Detroit. He took off in the 70s. So it's like this guy took over the band. Number 8, Queen, Made in Heaven, 1995. It's a posthumous album, which are always a little dicey. Some vocals and some piano parts by Freddie Mercury that were recorded just a few months before he died. The tracks were finished by Brian May, John Deacon, and Roger Taylor. He said there's a lot of emotion, but is nonetheless disjointed and confusing. The writer of this says he thinks the three remaining members were just, pining for Freddie. This is just a goodbye album. Okay, number 7, a Jethro Tull, titled The Jethro Tull Christmas Album from 2003. It's a...
I don't really see Jethro Tull and Christmas mixing in.
Sitting on a park bench, Santa Claus is snot running down his nose. It's not going to work out. Number 6, Pink Floyd soundtrack from the film More.
Plus.
1969, man. It took a while to dawn on Pink Floyd that they were a great soundtrack band for their own increasingly spectacular light show. Anyway, they made a foray into soundtrack writing with this, and apparently it's dreadful. But
it is.
Who knows? Number 5, The Rolling Stones, Emotional Rescue from 1980. I remember this album. It's horrible. This is a bad album. This came... Okay, the Stones got scared, and the disco was so prevalent, and this is their disco album. And it really doesn't work. It's just...
most of the albums in the 80s didn't work.
Yeah, well, it didn't work for classic. A lot of classic rock bands got lost. That is the low point. It's too bad. There was one hit on it, I remember. It's a dreadful album. Number 4, Alice Cooper, Goes to Hell, 1976. They blame this on the fact that during this, I guess, a show in Vancouver, he actually fell off the stage, and because of that, he drank to, overcome the pain of his injuries, and that it was a bad album. I remember, and he kind of Alice Cooper disco. It was the beginning of disco. These guys lost their way. Vince Fournier, who we mentioned earlier. Number 3, Led Zeppelin, Celebration Day 2012. This is a recording of the much celebrated O2 Arena reunion show, which, if I did watch it, and they're okay. They're like a really good Led Zeppelin tribute band. I mean, Page's playing isn't quite what it was. It's more noisy. Plant is not hitting the highs like he used. They're older. It happens. And that comes out when you hear them and not so much as see them on the video.
And the pants aren't as tight now.
What's that?
The pants aren't as tight as they were back in the day.
They didn't even try. They're wearing sweatpants.
Jesus Christ.
Number 2, Kiss, Carnival of Souls from 1997. In the 90s, this is again what they're writing here. After Nirvana changed pretty much everything in rock music, a few stars of the hair metal era tried their hand at the grunge album. Motley Crue and Def Leppard tried, and Kiss tried with Carnival of Souls. And apparently it's just unlistenable. And they tried to pull it back, but you can get bootlegs, so-called official bootlegs. And number 1, Deep Purple, The Battle Rages On, 1993. It's the last one with Richie Blackmore. And I guess the guy who wrote this review said it's just unlistenable. And Blackmore called it The Cattle Grazes On, because I guess it's a really limp album. But there you go. 10 worst albums by 10 classic rock bands. That was Ian's knock.
Well, now, Clarky, now that we've finished knocking, you actually have to knock and talk about the next one.
Which is
The
my
Cars.
best friend's girlfriend. Oh man, the Cars. Oh,
Rick
God.
Ocasek. Remember, Ewan, I said he'd be one to bring back? You're like,
That'd be a waste of electricity. He was married to Paulina Porizkova, the supermodel, and no one could believe it. Okay, they're both kind of Polish heritage, but so are millions of other people. Anyway, he's gone now, just recently, and the story behind the name, the drummer came up with it, and it kind of goes with the band, the whole minimalist approach. Like they were very. The best thing I can say with the Cars is some of it was catchy music, and very minimalist rather orchestrations and arrangements rather, and that's really it.
all right. Cheap Trick. The name was inspired at a Slade concert where bassist Tom Peterson commented that the band used every cheap trick in the book as part of their act.
Oh, and they don't. Okay. Right.
Chicago.
Toddle in town. Sorry.
So Chicago, in 1968, the Big Thing moved to Los Angeles at their manager's request and signed with Columbia Records. That's where Jimmy Guercio, I'm not exactly... Guercio, who would eventually become Chicago's producer, changed their name to Chicago Transit Authority in honor of the bus line they used to have in their school. So basically, they later shortened it to Chicago because, frankly, nobody wanted to say, "Oh, have you had the last Chicago Transit Authority album in your store?"
But they could have done CTA like BTO.
CCR.
Start CCR.
All right, Cream. Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker. The reason they apparently we call Cream is that these guys are all really well known and kind of the best bassist, best drummer, best electric guitarist. And as Clapton said, it was incredibly pretentious to call themselves Cream, as in, cream rises and the best in the business. So it was a bad move.
Creme de la creme.
Yeah, they all regretted it, but that's what happened. And I'll talk about them later, actually, in a different segment, Cream. Who we are in Deep Purple?
Yeah, Mauve Profond. So these British rockers had been calling themselves Roundabout before the Yes song of the same name. At guitarist Richie Blackmore's suggestion, who you just had mentioned recently in your knock, they changed it to Deep Purple after a song that went back the big band era. And it was the first cut by the Paul Whitman band.
Paul Whitman was a big guy.
Oh, Whitman, sorry.
It's okay.
In the 30s.
Yeah.
Next.
Def Leppard.
Ah, yes, Def Leppard.
So singer Joe Elliott initially coined the name Def Leppard while writing reviews for Imaginary Rock Band.
He's DEAF, leopard as the animal.
So basically, he was writing reviews for Imaginary Rock Band for his high school English class. So basically, it's probably one of the nerdiest names out there. The percussionist of the band, Tony Kenning, at the original lineup, suggested modifying the spelling to make the name seem less punk.
I'm sure. I think that worked. Layla. Derek and the Dominoes, formed in 1970. Who was it? Eric Clapton, Bobby Whitlock, Carl Rattle, Jim Gordon.
Kiefer Sutherland.
And Kiefer Sutherland?
Yeah, why not? Just the way you were going on there.
What the hell was going on there? He was a little boy when he was in the band, singing Layla. And Dwayne Album was there. They only had one studio album, and I think the group built itself for a while as Dell and the Dominoes and Clapton. At this time, Clapton, the whole Clapton is God thing was out, and he wanted to shift the spotlight away, understandably, and so instead of Eric and the Dominoes, they just called it Derek and the Dominoes.
Well, all right, and then the next one, Dire Straits. That's usually sometimes when you need help and you're in such dire straits. But the Knopfler brothers, both David and Mark, along with friends John, Ilsley and Pick Withers. Well, that's a pretty nice name, Pick. Formed Dire Straits.
Got that.
Yeah, maybe he's too picky. I don't know.
Oh, something else is really off.
They chose this name believed to originate from a suggestion by a musician flatmate of Withers. He allegedly plucked it out of the thin air while they were rehearsing in the kitchen of a friend before Dire Straits recorded a 5-song demo tape back in 1977.
So the next one are the Doobie Brothers.
I wonder how they got that one.
So basically, the Doobies were a bunch of hippies living together in the Northern California commune, and they were looking for a name for their band. A non-musical housemate suggested the Doobie Brothers on account of the fact the members were smoking weed all the time. So basically, Doobie was just a description of the guys.
Why not? Oh, what's up?
Oh, here's something.
No more leakage into the studio.
What is going on here?
It can mean one thing to me. I've heard it before. I'll hear it again.
And now, Yes or No with Ferris Kennedy, the segment where the sick, drug-addled mind of Mr. Kennedy forcibly asks Dr. Clark and medicated Wheeler yes or no questions about classic rock, and you get to hear the sick, drug-addled answers.
Makes my knees freeze.
Well, gentlemen, we are back with season 5, and we're progressing nicely in 2021. So, Ian, we're going to start off with you today.
Yes, great.
Do you like the California Raisins as a novelty act?
I find it offensive. No.
Okay, fantastic.
But you love them as a snack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you appreciate and respect James Taylor as a great singer-songwriter?
Boy, great singer-songwriter. Yeah, I respect him, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were both Jim Morrison and Roger Daltrey sex symbols during their prime time as artists?
Oh, yeah, huge. Both of them were, especially Morrison. He was on the cover of teen magazines. Like, he just don't, with a whole bunch of kind of, like David Cassidy took over, but Jim Morrison one time was on. It's hard to believe, but yeah.
Okay. Would you agree that both Andy Kim and Neil Diamond are similar, as they both wrote songs for what was supposed to be fictional groups? So the Archies for Andy Kim and the Monkees for Neil Diamond.
Good. I like that.
You like that one?
Yeah,
you didn't know where I was going with that one.
No, that was really good. Yeah, they did. They wrote for the Monkees and they wrote for the Archies, big hits. And plus, they had kind of a similar style, kind of a Vegas-y thing going on with them. Yeah.
All right. I stumped you on that one. You're like wondering where I was going.
Yeah, good.
Did Wolfman Jack play an integral part of classic rock music being promoted on radio airwaves?
Yeah, he really did. Not many people know that. He had a very powerful radio station, like a lot of wattage, and he was an influential DJ. And just watch the movie American Graffiti, and you get a vibe on Wolfman Jack.
Isn't he also in one of the songs from that era? Like somebody...
Yeah, guess who wrote a song? Yeah. Clap for the Wolfman.
Yeah, he was inspirational. Did Dick Clark play an integral part in promoting rock and roll?
Yeah, he had a nationwide U.S. TV show, and he had people on there. In fact, some obscure groups, the only footage you have of them is of Dick Clark. So yeah, he played a role.
Did you find him irritant?
He became so kind of powerful to the point where Saturday Night Live did a skit on Dick Clark where Jesus of Nazareth walks into Dick Clark's waiting room and tries to get an appointment with him, and he can't get one because Clark said, forget it, not next. Like he became really a pill, but in his prime, yeah.
Wasn't he also responsible for people like Pat Boone doing covers of black artists in this late 60s?
Not really. He would promote, like Pat Boone did a cover of Little Richard's Wop Papa Loop Bop Bop Bam. But it's just so pitiful. But Dick Clark, yeah, that was always the knock against him, is that he would not have black performers on his show as much as whites because the advertisers wouldn't want it. It's true. So it's a sad thing. Yeah.
And the last question for you, Dr. Clark. Do you respect Rick Dees for promoting music and for also having a hit called Disco Duck?
No, he should be shot in the face and dragged down a stucco wall.
Okay.
Sorry.
Glad we asked you that.
Hunting season.
There's nothing that you can have.
Wheeler.
Yes, sir.
Despite your dislike for Depeche Mode, do you agree that they do belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Soft Rock Hall of Fame, maybe.
That's not the question. So it was
yeah, sure. There are so many people that shouldn't be in there anyways, so might as well.
All right. Next question. Was David Gahan a sex symbol in his prime time with Depeche Mode?
How would I know? I was too young in that era.
He was a good-looking guy back then.
I don't know. I mean, you had posters on the wall. You saw
Yeah, to throw darts,
and
dude.
he's all greased up. No, okay.
Do you agree with my statement that David Lee Roth, a.k.a. as known as Diamond Dave, has better showmanship than Freddie Mercury?
I think so at a certain level. Freddie Mercury was more of a theater artist. I would say he was more like a avant-garde kind of guy in a
He's
way.
no Diamond Dave, so that's good. I like that answer. Did Howard Stern take interviewing artists of music to the next level?
To the next level, maybe not. But for the Americans, yes. I find that if you listen to the BBC and some Canadian radio hosts, they do like really in-depth interviews. But Stern has taken it to another level for the States because he has this great forum on satellite radio.
Fantastic. Did Casey Kasem get the top 40 to become more
America's
popular?
top 40.
I think so, yeah.
Number 1, the Beatles.
Okay, so you think he made it more popular?
Or yeah.
Number 2,
Well, at least for kids in the 80s and 90s.
and number 3.
All right. And when Roger Waters left Pink Floyd, did they still achieve the status and success without him?
Not really, no.
Okay. And then the last one, Ozzy started off with Black Sabbath, but has more recognition as a solo artist. Yes or no?
As a reality artist.
I was gonna say, I think it depends on who you ask. He was more influential as a Black Sabbath member. He was more popular as a solo artist.
And that is it for my yes or no's.
No.
Ian, it's your turn to speak about Les Portes.
Oui, the Doors, well, you know, ladies and gentlemen.
That was Bridget Bardot's favorite band, Jim.
Yeah, of course it was her. I love Jim Nelson. The Doors, okay. The 18th century poet William Blake he had nothing to do with it. No, he had the Marriage of Heaven and Hell. He sat around, smoked dope, and got fat. No, the Marriage of Heaven and Hell was a Blake poem and inspired Aldous Huxley. I'm sorry, a Blake book. Aldous Huxley was an interesting cat. He wrote, I won't go into that now, but Aldous Huxley did write something called The Doors of Perception, which I actually have read. And Jim Morrison, who was a RT guy, read this too, and he said, not a bad name, The Doors of Perception, and it was shortened to The Doors, which you think about it is a really bad name for a band. It's just so flat and kind of dumb.
The windows, the eavesdrops.
Yeah, it's not like, yeah.
The furnaces.
The scaffolding. It doesn't make the door, but now we're so used, like the Beatles, as I said before, we're so used to it.
Ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen,
the
the light fixtures.
It's just a bizarre, the door handle.
Stupid name. I'm sorry, it's a stupid
Dumb
name.
I think the next
Name is even
really
more
dumb.
stupid. Yeah, the Eagles. Bernie.
It sounds like a high school band. Hi, we're the Eagles. We're from grade 10, and everyone here is it's just a really bad name.
The squirrels.
Yeah.
Bernie
Hi, everybody.
Leadon.
Bernie Leadon.
He's the one that's credited with coining the name the Eagles during a drug and alcohol-enhanced group trio to the Mojave Desert. This is it. That's where I'm going to end it off there, man.
There's no point going on.
Next one, Wheels.
ELO, the Electric Light Orchestra.
Another stupid name, just like the Doors.
I know, but it works because you're so used to it.
Because it's Jeff Lynne. He pushed the button on the White Album.
Although it's also due to the fact that it's Roy Wood with Jeff Lynne. Roy Wood was with The Move.
Yeah.
In the very 60s.
So basically, they formed this orchestral pop and rock outfit in the 70s. They chose their name as a pun on the British phenomenon of light orchestras, which is basically elevator music. And so basically, it's to trick people that usually bought easy listening music to listen to this amazing music. So it's more of a less of a pun or a trick.
All right. Next one, Ian, your friend, Reginald Kenneth Dwight.
Elton John was actually originally born Roger Waters. He changed it. he changed it to Bertie Top, and they had to change it again because he met a guy named Bertie Top. It's very confusing.
He went to Rocket Man and he realized it already.
The whole thing, he lost his hair and he got... not long ago. Okay, I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to wing it because I know the story. Yeah, he named it after two performers. He got Elton from... What was the guy's name? He was a jazz guy.
I thought it was from Eeyore from the Winnie the Pooh.
Elton Dean. You know, it was Elton Dean. And Long John Baldry, the late Long John Baldry, he got John because Baldry helped him out.
Okay.
In many ways.
All right, next, the Faces. The Small Faces came out of the 60s mod scene.
True.
And were named for their physical stature and the modern term face.
Yeah, face used to mean like he's a main guy. He's the face.
So when Steve Marriott was replaced by Rod Stewart and Ron Wood, the band shifted styles and shortened it name to the Faces.
I know, these guys are geniuses. What do we call stuff now? The Faces? I know, you're right.
So next one, Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
So basically they're named for Mike Fleetwood and John Megvie, basically as a ploy on guitar player Peter Green's part to keep them in the band. So basically it's a peace offering.
Yeah.
So basically here, take 3 letters of my name, take the rest of your name, and just go that way.
Why not?
All right.
It works.
Foghat. On the even including this first album, this band was still struggling to find the right name. Brandywine Track and Hooch had been considered, thank God, Brandywine Track. Okay, and rejected before Foghat was finally selected. Guitarist Dave Peverett reportedly made up the meaningless word in a childhood game with his brother. Why not? What the hell? It's a good name. I like these episodes. That's some great trivia.
All right. You're Cold as Ice, Foreigner. Well, Trigger, this band's original name was already being used by someone else, so Mick Jones came up with Foreigner. The name was inspired by the fact that at least 3 of them would always be foreigners no matter where they went. The original lineup included a trio of Brits, Jones, Ian MacDonald, and Dennis with 2 N's, Elliott with 2 L's and 2 T's, as well as the 3 Americans Lou Gramm, Al Greenwood, and Ed Gagliardi. I've seen these guys live.
Oh, really?
They're pretty good. Yeah, they're not bad.
It was cold as ice.
So next one is Free.
Gratuit in Quebec.
Me.
So basically it's Alexis Corner, who's basically considered the father or sometimes grandfather, depending on how mean you want to be to him, of British blues. And he suggested this name and to 15-year-old Andy Fraser, and basically Free just stuck as a name.
It's free.
It's free.
Anything.
Exactly.
Genesis prog rock pioneers got their name from the first manager, Jonathan King, who's going to call them Gabriel's Angels. Well, is that pretentious?
That's from the Bible.
And yeah, but it's a reference to founding frontman Peter Gabriel too. I mean, oh, really?
She could call them Collins Angels.
You know, really.
Charlie's Angels.
Steve's Angels. Instead, he kept the biblical feeling, but went for a name that seemed more appropriate for the beginning of an endeavor. Okay. Anyway, it worked.
Golden Earring.
Been driving all night, my hands are wet on the wheel.
I guess they wanted to be called the Tornadoes, or originally called the Tornadoes, until they learned that the moniker had already been claimed. The Golden Earrings took their name from an instrumental called Golden Earrings by the Hunters.
It's a good thing they didn't call themselves the Pearl Necklaces.
Yeah.
That's good.
Next one, Grand Funk Railroad, which is basically a wobbly play on words suggested by the manager Terry Knight. The Grand Trunk Western Railroad still runs through the band's hometown of Flint, Michigan. They were simply known as Grand Funk for a time, mostly at the beginning of the 70s, and then it was Grand Funk Railroad.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
The Grateful Dead, unsurprisingly, the Grateful Dead came up with their name while tripping. Oh! Paging through a folklore dictionary, Jerry Garcia stumbled upon the term which related to the soul of an unburied dead person expressing karmic gratitude to someone who arranged for their eventual burial. Like, you gotta be stoned to even listen to this shit. Legions of death metal bands would undoubtedly come to present, the fact that the hippies beat them to it on this one. I guess so. Okay. I mean, it is a good name because it makes you think for a second. But you could only be stoned for that.
All right. The next one, they're known for Glamour Boy.
Put your costume on, you got.
The Guess Who, Winnipeg rockers who were first known as The Expressions, recorded a cover of Johnny Kidd and the Pirates' Shaking All Over in '65, and it became a surprise hit in Canada and reached the US top 40. Pretty impressive. When The Expressions recorded an entire album of the same name, its record company, Quality, listed their name as Guess Who, and that's what stuck on the jacket, and therefore the Guess Who was born.
True enough.
Guns N' Roses. Yeah.
Love them.
So Izzy Stradlin from Hollywood Rose spent some time in the mid-'80s as a roommate with L.A. Guns member Tracy Guns. When L.A. Guns needed a new singer, Hollywood Rose Axl Rose came aboard. This led to a 1985 formation of Guns N' Roses, a combined lineup that featured Rose, Stradlin, and Guns, along with Old Beach and Rob Gardner. Melding their names on both previous groups proved to be a much better call than rejected suggestion Heads of Amazon and AIDS.
These guys. Oh, not what? Oh, come on. What is that?
Oh, hello.
The music at night, it sounds bright on Wheeler's turntable. He shines a light, he keeps his vinyl in sight, and gives you his magnificent review. Now here's a clue we have for you. It's time for Wheeler's Vinyl Review.
So today we're going to see the great new reissue of the Best of REM in Time, 1988 to 2003, which I'm going to give a 5-star out of 5.
Okay.
So it's Kraft Records recording.
Oh, the Cheese People.
The Cheese People.
They got into that.
It's they're really into cheesy music.
Orient and Velveeta.
Exactly.
I don't know which side of the business I'll go in, Dad.
So it's a double vinyl 180 gram stereo reissue.
Why they do 200 gram? Like, to be so American. You got 180, you got 200.
Actually, there are some 200 gram.
200 gram is even better.
So basically, it's for those of you who've had it on CD, you're probably wondering, like, why in the world would I buy it on vinyl?
It's heavier.
It's heavier.
It's 200 grams.
The reissue is actually done superbly. The sound is incredible, but the one thing where it really shines is because this is a great history of the band. You're basically going through almost a chronological order, and they've also included some obscure gems on there, and it just is one of the most amazing sounding band from the 80s. Like, they've actually aged really well. You have some of the great, really, the MTV era stuff. There is just a great energy flowing through this record the entire time, and so basically you have pre-stardom, big time REM, and even some of the songs that came out later, which were weaker albums, but they had like some really incredible sounding pieces on there. So seriously, double vinyl, you have 4 sides to go through, and you will listen to REM probably in a much more concentrated way than you usually would. Unfortunately, they came out in the era of CDs, so they were background music to a lot of people. So this is a way for you to really appreciate this band from the 80s, 90s, 2000.
And they quit when a lot of bands hang on till the death rattle. But those guys quit kind of at the top.
Exactly.
Which is amazing. Bands never do that.
So,
like Michael said, that's it.
That's it.
And they never went back.
No.
Kind of like the band, Robbie Robertson, the band, quit at the top. So, no, that's good.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
All right, next one is Don't Go Breaking My Heart.
I won't go breaking your heart. That was a song by Heart. No. That's for Ann Wilson and her sister. Oh, Ann Wilson. Boy. Yeah, remember that band. Previously established band by the name of Whiteheart. She was in that, and they had formed in 1967. My God, they've been around a long time. As the Army, this is so 60s, by bassist Steve Fossen. When Wilson joined the band, changed its name to Hocus Pocus. Like, these are so... In 72, Wilson met Mike Fisher, bandmate, Roger Fisher's brother. Ann and Mike fell in love and came together with Roger and Fossen to regroup as a variation of Hocus Pocus, Whiteheart. I guess getting complicated now. For reasons unknown, I'm sure they did investigations. White was dropped from the title and the first iteration of Heart was born. Interesting, Ann's sister Nancy, the guitar player, joined in 1974.
All right. Humble Pie, taken after the scene of the American Pie where... what's his name? Jason Silver. I forget his name. Whatever. He's making love to a pie. No, it's actually Peter Frampton has said his new band was batting around names with hours of Steve Marriott's departure from the Small Faces. Mm-hmm. Each member put forward a suggestion, and Marriott's Humble Pie, making clear
he pronounced it Humble Pie.
Humble Pie, making clear their rejection of the Outside's supergroup label that was sure to follow. Ended up with one of that stuck, and the drummer rejected a name, and they wanted to go with Evil Cardboard. So.
Oh, God.
So next band, which was used on The Simpsons as a joke, the hymn from I, Ron Butterfly. It's more or less in the same vein as Led Zeppelin, who released their debut the same year. They arrived at their name basically out of the desire to combine two contrasting elements that would basically represent something heavy and something airborne. So, is there something more trippy than an Iron Butterfly?
Yes, there is. There's Emagata Davida. That's trippier.
Next one, Ian.
Iron Maiden got its name from a torture device. If you remember the horror movies, it looked like a mummy casket with spikes
formed on
in
Christmas Day, though.
Yeah, on Christmas Day. How's that for touching?
Okay.
Go for the James Gang.
James Gang. Nobody named James in the Cleveland-based band that put Joe Walsh on the map in the early 70s. They basically got this.
It was a Western.
It was Desperados, Jesse James.
Jesse James Gang.
Jefferson Airplane, later Starship, was basically an unusual band name, kind of like Blind Lemon came off afterwards. It's just a really bizarre combination of revamps of different influences of the band.
Words that don't belong together. It's
exactly.
Very 60s.
So the next one doesn't really belong.
Jethro Tull. Jethro Tull was the name of a guy from the 18th century who was involved in agriculture technology. What the hell? It worked, right? It just worked. Boy, everybody thought that Ian Anderson's name was actually Jethro Tull for a while.
Journey. Original members of Journey came together in San Francisco on a journey. That's pretty well how it happened. Basically, it was the roadie named John Villanueva suggested the name Journey, which was ultimately agreed upon because they were on the Golden Gate Bridge. That's how it came about.
Judas Priest.
Early member Bruno Stempenhill pitched a moniker to the original frontman Al Atkins after hearing The Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest by Bob Dylan. So basically, we have to thank Bob Dylan for this one.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bob. Ian?
Kansas. They formed in Kansas, I guess. Originally from Peterborough, Ontario. No, Kansas. These guys started playing some pretty complex prog rock. And that's basically, they lived in the state of Kansas, and that's where they got it.
King Crimson. Original lyricist Pete Sinfield, not Seinfeld, was not a fan of the name given to King Crimson's predecessor's band, saying anything was better than Giles and Fripp, so he came up with the name King Crimson. And that's pretty well how it came about.
Not bad.
They suck.
Sounds like a law firm to me.
Kiss.
Beck. Bisou.
Exactly. Which is much better than the original name, Wicked Lester. Before.
I know that trivia. It's not bad.
No, but frankly, if you want some credibility, not the greatest thing. So when Peter Criss brought up the fact that he had previously played in a band called Lips, Paul Stanley chimed in with the name that would accompany him and his compatriot to superstardom.
And the last one for this segment?
The last one for this segment, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is part one of a two-parter.
Of 101.
Of 101, so this is about 50 or 51. I say 50. It's called Led Zeppelin. I'm not sure. Everybody knows this story. Keith Moon and John Entwistle, I'm not going to tell you who they are, were joined Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones on a Jeff Beck single, Beck's Bolero, which is an interesting song, in 1966, and they started talking about band names. And Moon, or maybe Entwistle, joked that a new band proposed by Paul Jones was talking to them, I guess, so the bassist of Led Zeppelin, the new name would go over like a lead balloon. And so, a little while later, when they were trying to come up with the name, that story came up, and they called it, instead of lead balloon, they called it Led Zeppelin. Kind of, it's more with the term. Lead balloon sounds. Led Zeppelin's good.
Yes, that sounds better.
Yeah, and that's it, ladies and gentlemen, for our first part of how the hell did they get those names?
That's it. So I'm Ferris Kennedy signing off.
I'm Dr. Ian Clarkson. Bye-bye.
And I'm Stephen Wheeler, going to bed.
Au revoir.
It makes my knees freeze. It makes my back crack.